Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Fabulites. I got a question or two for you. What opens with the start of the story of Essie McGowan, and what closes with the end of the Essie McGowan story? If you guessed American Gods, Season 1, Episode 7, A Prayer for Ma, you're correct. And if you'd like to see how we get from opening to closing, please stick around for my recap review. I'm Angela. The channel is Be Fabulous You. Thank you for watching, coming back, liking, commenting, subscribing, and all of those other wonderful, fabulous things. All right. So, okay. So the funeral home men, there are two of them. One of them is Anubis and one is his partner, the narrator. Anubis works on a body while his partner writes an account of Essie McGowan. Now, I've seen him writing throughout, but I didn't know that he was the writer. I didn't know that he was the storyteller. I didn't know that he was the narrator. Hold on one second. And we're back. So he is telling the story of Essie McGowan. And doesn't she just look just like the dead wife Laura? I didn't know. Later on, I saw a little piece, and it's the same actress playing both roles. And I don't know. I didn't know. I'm like, is this supposed to be the great-great-grand-grandmother or something like that? Is it like just the same kind of vibration of woman? Or is it supposed to, embody the spirit of the woman? Or is it like a literal child of the woman? But anyway. So it is dead wife Laura, the same actress, is playing both roles. And we see Miss Essie's branding as a thief. She didn't start off as a thief. She didn't end up as a thief, but she was a thief in the middle. So she's a poor Irish working girl, and she's recounting to children stories that she was told as a child, but she's believing them as more than stories and making sacrifices, including her only money, a gold coin, and a saucer of milk, a piece of bread throughout her life. Sometimes it's a whole loaf of bread. Whatever she has, even if it's just crumbs, she does make a sacrifice to Leprechaun. And it leads to sex with and a gift from the son of the house. And so Essie is admiring the gift the next day at work. It's a necklace, and she pulls it out and she's looking at it. And one of the other women who works with her sees that, goes and tells, the woman of the house, the head of the house, the man's mother who she had had sex with. And the woman brings her son to Essie, and she says, "Son, did you give her that freely?" Probably he took his mama's necklace and gave it to this child. And he says no. And then Essie is sentenced to hanging, but given a reprieve and sent to work off her sentence as an indenture. And she continues her sacrificing on the boat and to a leprechaun, on the boat going from Ireland or England. Was it Ireland? I thought it was Ireland, but I don't know. But to America. And the captain falls in love with her in transit. And she makes it to America, but then they go back to England. And, he's happy, and he leaves to go back on the boat because that's what he does. He's a boater, a boat captain. He he goes back to work, and as soon as he goes back out on the water, the captain, she robs him. I don't know if she robs him blind, but she robs him. And then we see her, so then we fade into dead wife Laura and a fly. She always has that accessory going, them flies. And the threesome is still in the cabbie's cab, the cabbie Laura and Mad Sweeney, the leprechaun. And the leprechaun is complaining. "Didn't you just pray? What? You do the whole load?" And the cabbie is like 5 times a day. And he's looking at at Laura. "You can join me if you want." She's watching with flies flying by. And Mad Sweeney is peeing and conversing with a crow. And, she says she doesn't want to join him. She's just watching. But he's having a conversation with the crow. And he's telling the crow, "I'm heading to Wisconsin. That's our agreement." And he doesn't like it. "Well, tell that one-eyed cow, fuck you." And then Laura's like, "Oh, you talking to birds?" And she's like, "We should let him go," meaning the cabbie. And we can make it from here. And the leprechaun is like, no, we need to get there as soon as possible. I only made a detour for you and the coin in your belly. I think that's what he's saying, but he could have said body. You think you want to get there too. Get to your resurrection quickly. And Laura says to the cabbie, you're released. We're going to House on the Rock, Wisconsin. And, go on off and find your gin. They'll all be there. Go do your thing. And then the cabbie to the leprechaun as he gets into the car. You are an unpleasant creature. And then he speeds off like a bat out of hell. And then we see Laura forcibly opening the back of an ice cream truck. And the driver is like, may I help you, ma'am? And Laura's like, we're taking your truck. Tell your boss you were robbed. And the driver's basically like, well, hit me so it's believable. Sweeney punches the driver. He like, trust me, you don't want this one hitting you. Okay, so then we see Anubis's partner. The narration is continuing. We hear and we see examples of Essie's continued shoplifting and continued milk saucer homage and other homages to the leprechaun. And we see Essie getting a cat and getting distracted from her leprechaun homage by a man. And then, so she goes on with her life stealing, but she ain't really making the sacrifices that she's supposed to be making or whatever she had been making. And then she's literally runs into a man, is it the original judge, while stealing. And she's sentenced for theft and returning from transportation. And it's only a matter of time before she faces the gallows. And then her next door cellmate is Mad Sweeney the leprechaun. They never see each other, but they chat through the walls. She makes a homage by putting her bread on the windowsill. He's told her, don't eat the soup, just eat the bread. The soup will make you sick or whatever. And she takes the bread and puts it on the windowsill. And she tells him, he's like, you pretty girl like you shouldn't have to, get killed. You can work something out. And she's like, well, I already had one chance. I had transport. I got to the Carolinas, but I didn't really get my chance in America. And anyone could be anything in the Americas, even happy. That's what she's saying. And, she's telling him, you could deliver gold to the king of the Americas. And he's like, there is no king. And she's like, well, you could make one or whatever. Maybe Zero is the king. Trump. I don't know. Okay. So, because he likes gold. The next morning, she wakes up and she's cold. And she continues her chat with her next door neighbor. But there's no response. And then we see Anubis's partner, we hear Anubis's partner narrating. And he says, the condemned never know when the hangman has coiled his noose. And then Essie hears footsteps. So we're like, oh my gosh, is the noose coming for her? Did the noose come for Leprechaun? Was it Leprechaun or was he just a common criminal? We don't know. I think I know. But anyway, the warden, the narrator tells us, makes 3 factual statements, and he's brought her food. And I think this food looks much better than what she got the last time. And the 3 factual statements he makes are that, there are 12 weeks till her hanging, and that she's pretty, and that she might be able to escape death. And then we see them sexing. When Essie's time comes, we see her back before the judge or whatever, and she pleads pregnant. I plead pregnant. And sure enough, she is pregnant. And so she is again sentenced to transport. She lands in Norfolk, Virginia with the baby. And she's indentured to a man who needed not only a maid, but a wet nurse because he had a baby as well. So the children drink Essie's milk and also her tales of the leprechaun. And then we're back to Laura driving the ice cream truck, and Sweeney is her passenger, and he throws a handful of gold coins out of the truck. Laura, how much gold do you have and why? Sweeney, well, how much is a hoard? That's how much I have. I was a king once. I was. Then they made me a bird. Then General Mills took over. And then Sweeney talks about the war, and on the eve of the war, he looked into the fire and he saw his death. So he knew that he would die if he stayed, and he left. So he owes a battle. And then we see a rabbit, and it runs across the road, and then in slow motion, Laura swerves to avoid the rabbit. Then the ice cream truck tips over. Then the ice cream bars fly, and then the truck flips, and then the gold coin rolls, and then we see Laura's exposed ribs as she's laid out on the road. dead. Again, I guess deanimated. And then we back to Essie's storytelling, and she's explaining sacrifice to the children and, paying homage and everything. And the master hits tentatively on Essie, and Essie plays him. She says, "How could you treat me, a woman who has so much respect for you, like this? How could you torment a poor widow like this, a poor transportee, a girl who's got feelings for you, feelings that you can't possibly return?" And then John Richardson gets down on one knee and he proposes an end to her indenture and a marriage. And they raise their 2 kids. She raises the 2 kids to pay homage to Leprechaun for safety, making sure they always have salt and bread in their pocket. And then 10 years later, John Richardson dies. Essie continues to leave offerings to her leprechaun, and the farm flourishes. As a mother, she becomes not only a mother, but eventually a grandmother. And then she's told tales until one of the grandchildren cries at her tales. And she realizes that there are no room for her tales in Virginia. So Essie just keeps them in her heart. She does. And the leprechaun comes to visit. Is he deaf? Yep, he is. So then this is modern day. The leprechaun comes to in an overturned ice cream truck, and he sees the dead wife Laura, and he limps over to the coin, and he's walking away, and then he's remembering his murder of Laura before she was dead. And he's remembering himself as the leprechaun, saying to the crow, tell him it's done." And he's looking back at the dead wife, Laura, of the ice cream truck dead wife. And he's cursing in Irish. And then he says, "Fuck!" I didn't understand the Irish, but I understood that curse. And then he puts the coin back in Laura's chest. And she reanimates and punches him. That's the thanks that he gets. And then she covers herself up. "Don't look! Don't look!" And she goes and she flips the truck back over and says, "Come on! Move it." And off they drive. And then we see Essie McGowan in The Leprechaun, and he's saying how there's no space in this land for magic and for homage. And Essie is like, "You've done me many a good turn." And he does a little magic trick, and she's amazed by the magic trick. And she willingly takes his hand when he offers it, and she dies. And we see Anubis, the partner we see Anubis's partner, the narrator, finishing the writing of Essie's story in his fountain. Is it fountain? What is it called? Fountain. It's not a fountain top pen, but the fountain ink fountain pens. There's a name for them. It's not a quill pen, but a fountain pen. That means a new hour has just turned over. And then he's finishing writing her story, and he closes his half-full journal. It's a big, fat book, and he closes it. And then we see a body of water in a teeny tiny island, or a teeny tiny island, or a huge boulder. Oh, that must be the doorbell ringing. Juts out, and then there's a person standing on the edge. That's what we got. Be you, be fabulous you. Peace.